You know, in India, there's a place that for many of us exists more in our imagination than in reality. We see these pictures of mist-clad hills, lush green valleys, but that beautiful postcard image, it hides a story of profound misunderstanding. In this explainer, we're going to use Sanjoy Hazarika's incredible work as our guide to try and understand India's Northeast, a people and a place made to strangers by silence. And this is our source, Strangers of the Mist. But it's so much more than a book. Really, it's a journey into the heart of the region. It's all about telling the stories of war, of peace, of identity and survival, but from the perspective of the people who actually lived it. Just listen to that for a second. The nowhere people. That's the fear from a village elder in Arunachal Pradesh. And it's not just some poetic phrase, you know? It's this raw, deep-seated anxiety, this fear of being completely erased, of having your entire history and culture just dissolve because of neglect, because of a world that just doesn't understand you. At its very core, this is a story about alienation. It's about how an entire region, just bursting with culture and history, was systematically made to feel like an outsider in its own country. And that distance, it isn't just about miles on a map. It's a distance built over decades, by silence, by policies made in capitals far, far away. But, and this is so important, it's also a story of just incredible resilience. It's about communities, about individuals who, despite absolutely everything, have held on so tightly to their identity, to their dignity, refusing to become a forgotten footnote in someone else's history. So, where does a misunderstanding this deep even begin? Well, the book suggests it starts with something you might not expect, something as simple and fundamental as a clock. This quote just illustrates the disconnect so perfectly. The sun is already up, right? The day has begun in the hills of Nagaland or Arunachal Pradesh, but most of the country is still sound asleep. The whole region is literally out of sync with the national rhythm before the workday has even started. And this isn't just a feeling, it's a hard fact. We're talking about a real-time difference of 126.8 minutes. That's over 2 hours between India's easternmost point and its westernmost point in Gujarat. And yet, the entire country runs on a single Indian Standard Time. Think about what that means. It forces a whole population to live completely out of step with the sun. Kids are going to school in the dark during winter, and hours of perfectly good daylight are lost in the summer, just waiting for offices to open. It's a classic example of a one-size-fits-all policy from Delhi that just totally ignores the reality on the ground. Now, this disconnect isn't just about time. You can see it, you can feel it on the ground. It creates this jarring contradiction between the stunning natural beauty of the place and the very visible symbols of neglect. I mean, you see these images of just breathtaking beauty, the rolling hills, the clear streams. It looks like paradise. But hidden in that landscape are these monuments to failure, these tangible reminders of good intentions gone terribly wrong and promises that were never kept. Take this one story from the Garo Hills in Meghalaya. A big steel ropeway was built to help farmers get their produce across a valley. It would have saved them hours of backbreaking work. They had a huge inauguration ceremony and everything. But as one farmer says, years later, it's just sitting there, unmanned, rusting, completely useless. It's a perfect symbol of wasted money and a top-down project that never once involved the local community. But then, just a short distance away, you find a completely different story. There's this beautiful riverside spot, and it's run by the local village chief, the Nokma, and his team. It's simple, it's clean, it's sustainable, they charge a small fee, and you know what? It works. It works because it's owned and managed by the community itself. It's powerful proof that local people often have the best solutions to their own problems. Okay, so these problems, they're not just accidents. They have these deep, historical roots that really show us how the people of the Northeast were actively, deliberately turned into strangers. It really starts under British rule, when these artificial borders were drawn right through ancient communities, cutting off trade routes that had existed for centuries. Then came the partition in 1947, which Hazarika calls a catastrophe for the region. It turned what was once a vibrant crossroads into this landlocked frontier, connected to the rest of India by just a tiny, fragile strip of land. And this was followed by decades of policies from Delhi that were just marked by a profound ignorance of local cultures and realities. The human cost of this ignorance is, well, it's staggering. Hazarika shares this one story about a chief minister from Nagaland, a state leader, being asked for his passport at a hotel in his own country. And the thing is, it's not some rare freak incident. It's a common, painful experience that makes thousands from the Northeast feel like foreigners in their own homeland. So what happens when people feel unheard for so long, when their identity is constantly questioned? Well, it can lead to some truly tragic consequences. And that brings us to the really difficult subject of insurgency, not as some simple caricature, but as a painful outcome of this very long history. For decades, the entire region was caught in this brutal, vicious cycle. Demands for autonomy, for simple respect, were met with military crackdowns, often blind to the different communities they were policing. And of course, the state's brutality was answered with fierce retaliation from rebel groups. It was, as one administrator put it, a dark and senseless period of mutual violence. But the nature of this rebellion, it changed over time. Hazarika is careful to draw a distinction between the early Naga guerrillas, who were often driven by a clear ideology and seen as honorable fighters who rarely targeted civilians, and the later generations of militants, where the lines got blurry and the struggle was often corrupted by money, by power, and by crime. And after all that fighting, what was left? There were no winners, only scars. The legacy of this violent era, for everyone involved, was this profound and deep-rooted bitterness and mistrust that, honestly, still poisons relationships to this day. So, where does that leave us? Is the future just doomed to be an echo of the past? Not necessarily. Hazarika shows us that hope can be found, not in some grand announcement from a faraway capital, but by finally listening to the voices from within the region itself. The path forward, it doesn't lie in more top-down projects that just end up like that rusting ropeway. No, it lies in empowering local communities, in respecting their wisdom, and in recognizing that the future must belong, quote, essentially with its own people. And this brings us right back to the heart of the matter. It's a really simple idea, but it's revolutionary. It changes how you see this entire story. They were made strangers. It wasn't an accident. It was a process. It was the result of historical decisions, of deep ignorance, and just a profound failure of empathy. And recognizing that simple fact, well, that's the very first step toward undoing that damage. Which leaves us with a final, vital question. And this isn't just about a region far away. It's about how a nation understands itself and all of its people. After decades of talking past each other, what will it finally take for us to truly listen?